Hey, B-Siders. Welcome to another episode of Bravo for the B-Side. We have something great this week. We have an awesome conversation.
Yes. Waited all week to do this, just like on the edge of my seat. I was so excited. I was telling all my friends.
You're still like oozing over it. We have Lowell Dean, the masterful force behind Wolf Cop, another Wolf Cop.
Writer, director.
Yeah, and some other projects that we'll discuss. I don't know. Let's just get into this, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we're off. Hey, B-Siders, welcome to another episode. This time we have the great Lowell Dean on the line with us, and we're going to talk about some stuff. We're going to talk about, obviously, our favorite topic on this, Wolf Cop, and another Wolf Cop, and some other things, and just kind of see where things go. So, hello, Lowell.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. For those who don't know, Lowell has under his belt, and these are just the like top movie picks that I wrote down.
Yeah, there's more than just this.
Yeah, 13 Eerie, Wolf Cop, another Wolf Cop, Super Grid, and you are. It said it's in pre-production. Deadlands.
Yeah, that's hopefully going to happen in the next year or so. We'll see. You never know.
And also on your list were some documentaries. Mm-hmm. Canadian documentary, TV series documentaries, and of course some shorts and things. And it's let's just jump in because I have some questions regarding Wolf Cop. When we saw the poster for Wolf Cop, it was an instant we're doing this.
Yeah, right away.
Yeah, because before we began the podcast, we put almost a year's worth of movies. Things that we'd already seen that were B movies or indie films. And then we were just looking through to see what was out there. And like everything else great that we found, Wolf Cop was buried in Amazon. We had, it came up as we looked at something and you might also like, we checked this, you might also like, we checked this. And then there was Wolf Cop. We're like, oh, what's that?
No, we found it on Hulu years ago.
Oh.
Yeah, it wasn't buried.
That's right. Oh, Wolf Cop. Another Wolf Cop is what came up.
Oh, yeah, because I hadn't known that there was a sequel. So I was very excited.
Yeah. The amount of people who say to me, hey, I liked Wolf Cop, you should make a sequel. And I'm like, oh, we did. So it didn't really get the marketing push that the first one did, that's for sure.
But anyway, it was fantastic. And we did an episode on Wolf Cop. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that jumped out at me, aside from all, it was just so fun and just a really great take on the whole genre of werewolf and horror. But it was, and I don't know if this is the distinction you want, but it's the first and only film that I've ever seen that had a penile transformation.
Yes, if we're going to go down in history for something, werewolf dick. No, that was, it wasn't the first thing that started the movie off, but it was definitely early on in the development, I've mentioned this before, but it kind of came around the realization of budget. And at every step of the way, making a movie that has a very low budget, mm-hmm. You always approach it with, why are we making this movie? Because I never want to make like a movie that's been done before. So at every step, we're like, how can we stand out? Not necessarily although this moment is definitely a showy moment. Always trying to make it in a showy way, but just like, why this has to exist for a reason. So it should do something. And we were trying to make the watchword was definitely fun and weird for this movie. So for the transformation, the effects artist, Emerson Ziffel, basically said to me, with the schedule we have and the budget we have, we can't do American Werewolf in London, which is what we're dreaming of. he's like, you'll be lucky if you get 3 shots, so they better count. And then I immediately was like, well, what haven't I seen? And of course, it was a dick. So that kind of became where that grew from.
Well, that's awesome though, because when we did the episode on it, we roll through the movie and we just kind of like, cover everything. We walk everyone through the movie, talk a little bit about it. And at the end, we just really, the lessons that anybody making film can learn. And the big thing for yours was special effects.
Yeah, 100%. Like I really wanted to make a practical effects werewolf movie. And this was at the time where pretty much every werewolf in film, if they weren't CGI, a lot of their transformations were CGI or they were enhanced. And I was just very kind of like bitter and being like, where's my man in a wolf costume? So
yes.
That was.
Well, and I did compare you to American Werewolf in London. Your transformation was different because your werewolf was the wolf under the skin.
Right. Peeling the skin off.
Yeah. Which we hadn't seen done
in a while,
in forever, in many, many years. And then it showed up on, I forgot the name last time. The Netflix series.
Oh yeah. Hemlock Grove.
Grove. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. I know. That's the only other time I remember seeing it recently too. I was like, okay. And that was a pretty fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in Wolf Cop, the method in which you did that, I compared it to American Werewolf in London because that was also back in the day of you only had the choice of practical effects. Yeah. And it was so great.
That's the gold standard American Werewolf for us. And if I would have had the budget and the time to spend a week just shooting transformation shots, I would have. But necessity is the mother of invention. So we didn't even have a full day for the transformation. If memory serves, we had I think about a half a day, and that's like the whole scene, right? Him entering the bathroom, a couple different fake penis puppets and things like that. So we didn't have a lot, but it was really fun.
That's awesome.
It is.
So you said that was pretty early along in the development and figuring out for the movie. So how did your idea for Wolf Cop start?
It's very ridiculous to repeat and say, but after 13 Eerie was my first film, and it was a okay experience, but it was definitely not. I wasn't the one creatively driving that film. I was kind of a director for hire, just, in the position of don't screw it up. And I came on really late. The movie was, I think, weeks out from production. So I really wanted to originate my own project. So after 13 Eerie, I became obsessed with I'm going to develop something from the ground up, from an idea to a script to a feature. And I was just daydreaming like you do and coming up with ideas and writing them on blackboards. And the 2 ideas that I was the most obsessed with were I really wanted to, as I said, make a werewolf movie. I really wanted to do a classic werewolf movie. And I also really wanted to do a detective film. And I was jokingly saying, I can't decide which of these to do. I should do them both. And the second I was saying that, I think, I forget which of my friends I was having this conversation with, but it was like a light bulb goes off. And then you're like, oh my God, what would a werewolf cop look like?
Oh, yes. And it's not to compare quality, but these kinds of combinations of things always make me think of this really awful asylum film that we watched, which was a Sherlock Holmes remake, but it had a Tyrannosaurus Rex in it.
Yes.
And when we saw the poster, I'm like, we got to watch this because I would never in my life have paired those 2 concepts together, Sherlock Holmes and a T-Rex. And it was a bonus watching it because there was a kraken
and a robot dragon
that changed size. Yeah,
I think kind of what you're getting in for when you something that absurd. I wasn't in denial about that people would think this was an Oscar bait film. It's especially called it when we gave it the name Wolf Cop. I knew that there was a big section of society that would just write it off as stupid. So that didn't change the script. That didn't change how we approached making the film. That didn't change our love of practical effects. If anything, I think in a weird way, it probably lowered the bar so that our intention and what I've heard from a lot of people who've seen it is they go in expecting it to be really horrible. And maybe because the bar is so low, they're like shocked that like, hey, you actually cared about the story and you put a lot of work in to some of the effects and the acting. Like it wasn't just like we tried to bang it off like, some of those crazy low budget films. I mean, don't get me wrong, our budget was low, but it was definitely a labor of love and as much inspired by the old Universal monster movies as it was by the the schlocky concept.
I think that's really clear, like in the first watch.
Well, and we did go into it because we love bad movies. Mm-hmm. And, we try to explain to people, we don't, it's not a B movie because it's bad, but, because some of them are wonderful little gems. I mean, they're not going to win any awards, so, we're, like I said, we're threw Wolf Cop on the roster there. Like, oh, let's give this a go. And
that sounds fun.
And we stopped halfway through to take a little break because we just had to talk. And like, this is really good. It's
that's all we can hope for. Like I just really was hoping that people would come for the name or the idea, and then I always hoped that when it was over, people would be like, "That was actually pretty fun." That wasn't like they actually put effort into it. It's just like, again, that sounds like the bar was really low, but like, no, we really just wanted to make. We weren't trying to change a life. We were just trying to have people be like, "That was crazy. I've seen things I can never unsee," and it felt like a comic book movie. That was my hope.
Yeah, well, I think that has been realized.
Absolutely.
That's how I feel about the movie.
Yeah, and we love it so much because it actually ticks a lot of boxes. I grew up on television and movies from the 30s, through the 60s. So all of my monster exposure was, Frankenstein, Dracula, all the sci-fi stuff, even Plan 9 from Outer Space and some of the Ed Wood stuff, but Forbidden Planet, just all this great stuff. And Wolf Cop rang the bell in that it wasn't campy, because that's where a lot of horror movies go for their comedy is straight up camp.
Yeah, winking. I don't like winking at the audience. I like, even if it's earnest and kind of silly, the world has to take itself seriously.
Right. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about this with another Wolf Cop too. The humor. I mean, it was genuinely just not like, we laughed, and it was just so well done, which and because we've always thought horror movies need to stop being the spook and scare kind and so filled with drama they almost barely qualify as horror. Mm-hmm. It's like, I just want to have fun. Horror movies used to be fun. The Blob was the funnest movie of my childhood.
Yeah.
Well, I think the ideal horror movie is like riding a roller coaster. You have high points and low points, but the whole thing can't be too serious about it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's like riding the kiddie coaster.
A lot of different great styles of horror film. That's why I love the genre as the blanket statement of horror. But for me, these ones, I knew that if we walked the tonal tightrope I wanted to walk, there's a good chance it wouldn't be that scary. We might still get a few scares out of the audience, but by and large, I was going for the tone of a comic book movie that just was like, when you watch an X-Men movie, you're like, I love Wolverine, but sometimes in the comics it's a little more violent. So for me, this was like, imagine if it was a horror movie and Wolverine walked in and wasn't just ripping up robots. Like when Wolf Cop faces a bad guy, a head will get ripped off. That's what I was going for. And that's inherently horror and gore and violence. But again, I don't think, I have friends even who are like, I can't watch a horror movie. They scare me. I'm sorry, I won't watch Wolf Cop. I'm like, trust me, it's just absurd. You can believe it. This isn't going to scare you. This isn't the Babadook.
Oh man. Okay, so we have Wolf Cop, and then you did another Wolf Cop, and which that episode will come out the week before this. And I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the preview that I popped up.
I did. Thank you. You're very kind.
Oh, well, thank you for listening to it. And it's not being kind. Trust me. We have railed on a couple of movies. But that was so much fun. And I think we said rarely does a sequel meet the expectations of the original, but for me, it surpassed the original because it was way more fun and it still didn't dive into the camp.
Yeah, well, again, I'm just happy you saw it. I feel like another Wolf Cop, it still to this day hasn't really gotten out there like I wish it would. I do think in many ways it's a better film. It certainly looks better and has a bigger budget, and more. Our effects budget was at least quadrupled. But I mean, I still have a very soft spot for the first one, but I feel like the second one, the story isn't as good, but the story is kind of secondary. I feel like the second one's just like, far can we push things? And at every step of the way, like with every single scene, as important as having a story, I was like, what's the crazy thing that happens in this moment? And really pushing the effects team. So I think it's like, even more so than the first one, the second film is to me a practical effects love letter and showcase, to the point where like there were points where we're like, should we clean up these shots with digital effects? And it was always like, no, this lives as it is, for better or worse.
A good choice.
I love that you're a practical effects junkie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I just like, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that one of my best friends is a practical effects artist and supervisor, because maybe if I had a VFX person at my side every day for the past 10 years, I'd look at the world differently. But because he can make things on a relatively not always crazy budget, I get way more comfortable with the idea of it, because when you don't have a big budget, it's always scary when people tell you, just have them stand in front of that green screen and in 6 months the shot will look great. Because I've had those moments where it does work, but I've also had those moments where it doesn't. And when you don't have a budget and you have practical effects, immediately. The person walks on a set and the gag happens, or they're in the costume or the makeup, and the second it's lit if it works. And if it doesn't, you have time to pivot. And if it does, you feel so much better. And you're like, now I can just worry about the movie because the monster looks like the monster.
Yes. Yeah. And I got to compare that to something. Long time ago, I used to be on the road a lot. So I used to listen to audiobooks. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorites was William Shatner's Star Trek Memories. Okay. And it's just talking about, his whole, from original series all the way up to the last movie he was in, and his life in the movies and stuff. And one of the things he was talking about was Star Trek V, which he directed. Yeah. And he had that same thing. He's like, there was these, they had the Teamsters strike. So they had to hire, other people to try and cross picket lines to drive trucks with the equipment and stuff to locations. And it was a writer's strike. He had so many problems. And not the least of it was he was up against his deadline, and he couldn't find an effects house because when the strike lifted, Industrial Light and Magic, all the big effects houses were booked. So he found this little homegrown place in New Jersey and sent them all the footage that they needed to do effects for the alien that's hidden behind the barrier. And he had these grand ideas and everything. And he's like, and my favorite quote from him, that audiobook is, and the day came, I got those effects back. And when I fired them up, they were decidedly less than special.
That's sad.
And and that's the kind of thing is, I get what you're saying, to shoot something that's basically in the ether and then, hope for the genie and everything to come together months down the road. That's scary in itself.
And sometimes it works, but if you're playing the odds and you're just thinking about reality, when you are a low budget film, it's not always going to work. And sometimes it's for various reasons. It's not necessarily like, I know talented VFX artists, but sometimes it's the deadline. Sometimes it's the budget. Sometimes, it could be they have the best intention, but the producer says you can only afford at this budget level to do 2 of the 6 shots you wanted. And then suddenly it becomes a creative compromise game, So there's so many factors to consider that when in doubt, I'm not a gambler when it comes to filmmaking. I'm definitely someone who's like, I want as much time as possible. I want as much money as possible. And if I don't know what's going to happen, I want it practical in front of my face so that I can sleep better at night and know that once the footage is on the chip and then it's on a hard drive, that's where it begins and ends. And, you're still, even in a non VFX heavy movie, you're still going to have probably hundreds of VFX shots just with monitor burn-ins and what are you putting on phone screens and TV screens and little things like that. So it's crazy to me.
One thing I want to ask you about is for another Wolf Cop. Now, the budget that I found said it was $3 million.
It was not $3 million.
Okay. Well, we put that on there as we go with what we can find.
It was early two, make like maybe 2.1 or 2.2 or something in that world. Okay. Canadian, remember. So both, like Wolf Cop 1 was 1.2 Canadian. So it was an under $1 million movie, American.
Okay.
Not that I'm making excuses.
No.
Oh, no.
I just wanted to verify because, when we do the research, you find what you can find. And I try to sift through and, we put it out there that this is how much it says it was and everything.
I would kill for $3 million to make a Wolf Cop movie. It would be the most glorious, big, crazy mess you've seen.
Everybody says that. We did an interview with Hilton Ruiz, who did Zombie with a Shotgun. And we were talking about 6-figure budgets. He's like, 6-figure budget? Man, I'd be happy with a good 5-figure budget.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've been fortunate, I guess, that I've had, I've made 4 feature films and they range from Wolf Cop 1 was the lowest, I think, at 1.2. And the Super Red was 13 Erie was the highest with 3.5, I think, Canadian. So they're all still in that same wheelhouse. And it's crazy. The difference between a $1 million movie Canadian and a $3 million isn't insane. It's you only get like 1 or 2 more shooting days, and you probably get 1 or 2 bigger, crazier things. Like we got to build a building and then blow it up, something like that.
Right.
Like actually physically blow it up. Versus in Wolf Cop, you get to build a miniature and blow it up.
One thing, before we start talking about the future of Wolf Cop, I have to ask you, Gitch.
Yes.
Now, I have spent many years, or over the years, I spent a lot of time in Canada. The only place I haven't been is Prince Edward Island. And I have never heard Gitch. What is that? Its history, origin,
I think it's very regional. I think it's. People across Canada probably know it, but it might be pretty heavily Saskatchewan based in terms of underwear. Yeah.
Okay. Now
I heard that all through my childhood. It's such a rough sounding word. It's like, where's your gitch? Put your gitch on. It's like, what? What's happening?
And because when I heard, I'm like, what is? I've never heard that. But then, thinking about it, to be honest, I don't think any of my conversation in the years I spent going around Canada. You
weren't talking to people about their underwear?
No. So I don't think that's something that commonly comes up, but
I don't think so.
But I was so tickled with the Gitch and Took 2-pack.
We really tried to keep it regional, and we definitely leaned on this silliness of Saskatchewan and so many of those stupid little things that we never even thought were out there, especially as the first film traveled. People would respond to things like that. Like Willie constantly was talking about Lou's Gitch in the first one, and everyone was like tickled and bringing up those lines to us. We're like, okay, I guess these aren't commonplace, so I guess we should bring them up more.
Nice. It worked. Got my attention. Let's talk a little bit about what's Lou's future.
Yeah,
I don't know, honestly. Yeah, so we did the 2 films. There's been like a limited comic book series, and we don't have any immediate plans. I don't know. I'm still a little saddened by the lack of exposure that Wolf Cop 2 got, because we really poured our hearts into that one, and it was a much harder film than the first one. And to have it not make much of a reaction, I think we're all kind of like, well, where do we go from here? I've been very vocal about wanting to do another film or 2. I have ideas for a 3 and a 4, and I always thought it would be cool, kind of like complementary bookends to the first 2. But I also, spent 5 years of my life making Wolf Cop movies, because we rolled, even though we didn't shoot 1 and 2 back to back, we rolled basically like creatively. I never stopped working on Wolf Cop. So I think I would be shocked if we didn't do something new with Wolf Cop. I can't. It's too soon to say what it would be, but there is ongoing conversations about would it be a TV series? Would it be another film? Would it be a graphic novel? And I really believe that the character is evergreen and could exist in many formats and many tones. So I, if we can find the right thing and everybody gets on the same page, I think is a good chance we could do more Wolf Cop for sure.
I think I hope we see more. I really do, because Wolf Cop has that Evil Dead vibe behind it. Evil Dead. See, now you have the distinction though of Wolf Cop and another Wolf Cop holding their own as exactly what they were meant to be: fun horror films. Homage to the practical effects and just splatter, and that's kind of what we love in the horror realm. Where Evil Dead was an accidental success. So they jumped on the bits that people really liked for Evil Dead 2. And then, of course, Army of Darkness. And, they just went all out. Like, there's nothing serious about this story at all.
That's my favorite one.
Not even the punctuation.
Yeah, that's kind of our trajectory, too. I mean, I actually think if I did another another Wolf Cop, like a third one right now, I think it would be actually tonally in between the first two. Because I feel like there is a little more darkness I'd like to weave back in, maybe especially with villains, but the humor and the playfulness between Lou and Willie and Tina is definitely something that I wouldn't want to mess with. So that tonally, I don't think I'd want to change, but I'd also want to introduce maybe some darker stakes, because the second one was so far in the silly direction. I'd like to almost remind people that like bad shit could happen.
Oh yeah, I would buy it.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned the great trio, the Trinity, Leo, Jonathan, and Amy. They seem to have a chemistry on screen that we talked about before in other episodes, where you can have the world's leading class actors, and if you get them in a room and they don't have chemistry, you're going to walk out with a giant turd for a scene. And, they have to have it at some level. But this seemed really like fun. And I was wondering.
Yeah, it's a weird and organic trio.
Did they have any kind of input or influence on how, say, this is the scene? Were there ideas? Because we're not good at writing comedy, so we fully appreciate when things make us laugh.
Yeah. I mean, I think I occasionally write something that's funny and clever, but I don't think there's been a single instance where they haven't elevated it. I mean, what I think the reason those three stand out is because we do a lot of improvisation, and all three of them are very comfortable with that. Like Leo is the anchor. Leo is, I would argue, the straight man in pretty much everything I do. And he's just a very down-to-earth, earnest Saskatchewan dude. Like literally things that are in the movie are because that's Leo. Like the character of Wolf Cop is frankly maybe too much written around Leo's personality. And even think he was modding the Wolf Cruiser, that when that happens on set or in the film, the behind the scenes is literally Leo in a garage doing that. Like he was the one building it.
Oh, really?
That's awesome.
Leo's the welder. Leo's everything. So that's the kind of salt of the earth movie we made, and that's his personality. Even when we did Super Grid, that his character had like a modded up vehicle, and he was once again one of the people in the garage focused on building those things. So he works with his hands. He is very blue collar. He is an actor, sure, but he also works. He's had a whole storied career behind the scenes on feature films as well. When he's not acting, he's a gaffer. He's a grip. He's doing all this. He's in film in every aspect. So that's what pours out of him. And so I consider him like the anchor of especially the three films we've done together. And then Amy is brought in, and Amy is a wonderful actor. She's good at like so many different things. and she has such a strength for improv. And what I really respect and enjoy about working with Amy is she's always ready to follow the text, but she also is really quick on her feet with improv. She can shift tones quickly. She can do a version of a scene that's very sweet and earnest. And if it's not working, she'll know and she'll sense it, and she can turn on a dime and throw a witty zinger out of nowhere and really keep things moving. So, and then there's Jonathan Cherry, who's literally just a wild card. He's not from Saskatchewan. He's kind of the interloper, the outsider who was. We were just dying. We had no Willie, and we were really close to shooting the first Wolf Cop. And I had seen a lot of auditions and tapes, but no one was really nailing the tone, because maybe if you just saw the script, it didn't really make sense. They're like, what the hell is this? It says Wolf Cop, but it's taking itself kind of seriously. And he was kind of one of the only people to kind of clue in. And when I saw his tape, he was just nailing it. Like, he was taking himself so seriously. It's almost that Back to the Future tone where, Marty McFly, it's a serious guy who you care about, but still, if you watch how he walks in rooms and falls off beds, it's like, are you in a slapstick movie? I can't tell. Harry nails that Doc Brown frantic energy, but you believe that he believes in himself, and nothing's a joke to him, but he's funny to watch, his conviction, right? So, and he improvised probably more than anyone in those films. And at first it was like, oh my God, you're killing me. I can't, we're going to not make our day if we keep throwing all your jokes in. But truthfully, his humor is such a key factor in those Wolf Cop films. Like, they would be nothing without it.
Well, the sound clips we picked were primarily with him, because
that's true.
Well,
now that I think of it.
Because what we were talking about with Amy is, we'll come back to Jonathan in a minute, but Amy, the one thing we loved about her is she has what we call the Jenna Coleman effect. And watching Jenna Coleman in like Doctor Who and Victoria, she has this ability to give you micro expressions. She can hold a straight face, but you can see the slight changes.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and it's both subtle and obvious, and you're just really like drawn in. Amy did that. That's one thing we were talking about. Every facial reaction to every single thing that in both movies, from beginning to end, it was just so appropriate. You almost could look past her as being like the one normal element.
Despite what I said earlier about like Leo kind of feeling like the straight man of the trio, Amy's Tina is definitely the straight woman of this world. She is the only sane person in Woodhaven.
Right.
And but I mean, also, even within the framework of that, she does add such a great underlying, almost psychotic element, because it's like she's still like, she's the one who's rational and thinking clearly and thinking all this stuff. Yet the second anything goes sideways, she's also the first person to pull out 18 guns. So there's something going on with you.
That was exactly it, because when that happened in another Wolf Cop, I'm like, oh shit, she's got her guns again. As soon as she decides this shit's real, she breaks out the fucking armory. She's just like,
you know where she's going. Yeah. So I do love that character. I love Amy's take on that character. And what's funny is, you notice these things and you pick up on them, but like, even for us, we're like, the first film was so much about figuring everything out, not just like the story of the origin story for Lou, but also for us as a team. So by the time we reached the second film, we realized that like Jonathan and Amy hadn't even had any scenes together. So we just got excited about the idea of like, well, we've got to make sure that we put you two in a room.
Oh man. I want to talk about movie making in Canada in general. So we've heard a little bit about the making of these two films, and I want to talk about it because a lot of people in the States, everyone doesn't really see a lot of differences between Canada and the U.S. Probably because we both speak English, and I've over the years talking to people like, really, it's like that, and I'm like, well, yeah, it's just different things. But one of the things that I want to talk about is like here in the States, we don't have any agencies or organizations backing film. I mean, we have Hollywood and the power of the producers and their, public face and how much they can, how much attention they can get from that. pushing out films. Whereas in Canada, you have Film Canada.
Yeah, we have Telefilm. We have agencies for sure that support.
Yeah, and I know almost at every level of artistry, I know that there's some support, because I know one of the drives of the Canadian government is, to promote all of this,
the arts,
all of this happening here, and you'll never get that here. it's there's too much power in Hollywood to allow that to happen, to be like a Godfather movie on a giant scale.
Well, yeah, and if we wanted to go to a lower level, like say the state that we live in, if we went to the state of Wisconsin, which there's a Wisconsin Film Festival and there's stuff like that, but if we went to any of these places and said, hey, we want to make a film, here it is, they'd be like, yeah, have fun with that.
Yeah, they don't have they don't have a department to handle permits. We were thinking of doing some little mini shorts to just kind of like flex our little creative muscles over the summer. Just do some like real simple, mindless 2-3 minute things and do like a little series of something. So, sort of looking at, well, what would it be like to, where would we have to go to get a permit to shoot downtown? There's no such place or thing.
No one knows.
When we did our short film, Danny was calling all these people for locations, and nobody knew how to handle anything. And
so you don't really have the infrastructure or the support.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering so you want to make a film, and I know that another Wolf Cop got a theater release. Was it Cineplex? I can't remember the name.
Yeah, Cineplex is the Canadian theater chain, the main Canadian theater chain.
Okay. Talk a little bit about how that helps, or does it hinder, or is it just a natural state of things where you don't view it either way in terms of making something?
I think it sounds like we've got it a lot easier here, but it's still very competitive and very hard, and you still feel like you're not getting noticed or attention. I mean, we do, like most states, most provinces in Canada, actually, except Saskatchewan, have a tax credit, so you can, there is kind of a safer system to get some money, and with some private investment and with, a pre-sale or a distributor, you can usually carve together a little bit of money to make your movie, assuming you're not a bigger budget film with a star. So I think like the theatrical thing was really important a while ago. The world has changed dramatically, not just what we're dealing with right now with COVID, but 10 years ago, the theatrical experience was everything. If your movie wasn't playing in a theater, no one cared about your movie. It was a sign that the movie wasn't good enough, right? Mm-hmm. But now, I can say honestly, like we had a limited theatrical release for both Wolf Cop films. The first one played in most major cities in Canada and a few American cities, and we toured at festivals and stuff like that for both films. But the day that the first Wolf Cop dropped on Netflix US was the day where I was like, this movie has finally reached its audience. Because, I'm someone I'm not, on Twitter very prominently, but I like to go on Twitter and respond to people when they mention favorably something about things, or, share in the horror or genre or filmmaking or comic book community. And I can tell you, I knew the day that we had hit Netflix US because I opened Twitter, and the amount of mentions and messages I had was insane. It was like the ratio was like when we came out in the theater, I'd have maybe like 5 people in a day send me a message on Twitter or something and be like, "Hey, good job." And when I opened it up the day after we were on Netflix US, it was like every day it was like dozens and dozens of messages. Like I think one day there was like 100 mentions or something, where I was like, geez, like then I remember sitting there and being like, that was the moment where I said, this is the new gold standard. This is the new way to reach an audience. I love the theatrical. Going to the theater is my church, but to reach an audience right now, if you offered me like a limited theatrical release or be on the main page of Netflix for a day, I would pick Netflix because different people make movies for different reasons. I make them to be experienced, and a movie like Wolf Cop enjoyed. So nothing would make me happier than, for example, when Wolf Cop also debuted on Shudder on Joe Bob's The Last Drive-In, because that was another experience where I remember I was going to Avengers Endgame, and I went in the theater and I turned off my phone like you do, and came out of the theater. I thought someone died. I had so many phone messages and Facebook. Everyone's like, are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? You're trending on Twitter. And I was like, what are you talking about? So those little moments show me the power of watching things online now, and the communal experience of streaming. So I 5 years ago I would have said something very different, but now I'm very much in that world and excited about it.
I'm kind of amazed, really, that both films don't seem to be like way out there, up there in everybody's vision and everything. And I guess, we have a Wolf Cop action figure.
Nice.
It's awesome.
Yeah. We don't have...
He does fall over a lot, though.
Yes.
Not anymore.
Emerson designed him. Which is pretty cool.
We don't have action. Well, we have an Ash figure from Evil Dead, but that's not, that's, after all the years, then they started making those things.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But I would have thought that, we came in late to Wolf Cop, and, we're missing out on this great cult hit because you've got toys, you've got action figures, which is like, a lot of stars dream of being anywhere from 3.5 to 10 inches in height depicted in plastic. What brought those about? The figure fundraising, or was it a push?
I think if memory serves, around the time that the first film came out, the distributor Synku, they really wanted to not just make a movie, they wanted to do a lot of the ancillary side things that a bigger budget movie would do when they were releasing. So we had to do it on a smaller scale, obviously, but they said, even when we were kind of pitching and developing the project, they said, what would you do? And to me, even from like I said, inception, this was a comic book style horror superhero. So I said, I treated it if it was like a no budget horror Marvel movie. I said I would want a comic and I would want action figures and things like that. So true enough, those were the things that we pursued.
Cool.
Nice.
We love our Lou figure.
Me too. I really wish we would have more the Star Wars size action figures of the whole world, but again, we'd have to be a little more prominent to get to that point.
Huh. Well, we're going to do what we can to make that happen.
Thank you.
Not that we have any power or presence, but what we can, we would love to. I would happily drop a paycheck on some, 3.5-inch Kenner or Hasbro Wolf Cop figures.
Imagine the Wolf car. Imagine Lou and Tina in the Wolf car. That'd be killer.
Oh my gosh. Like one of the big die-cast cars of the Wolfmobile.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
One day.
Well, let's get back to our trio here, because one question I wanted to ask was, so you've worked with them in 3 films.
Yeah.
And is because when we were watching these 2 movies and we saw the dynamics and everything, between those 3, we thought of Joss Whedon, who has his little group of people. They're in everything that he does. Yeah. Right. Is that kind of a bubble that you're building with these 3? Is
honestly, it kind of happened by fate or by accident, because the Wolf Cop movies, they're those characters to me, that happened like that. So obviously they're going to be in the sequel, and I wouldn't have wanted to do a sequel without the 3 of them. But for Supergrid was actually kind of a for-hire thing, where one of the producers of Wolf Cop, Hugh Patterson, had been developing Supergrid, and he'd been, workshopping scripts and going through other producer boot camps type things. And he hired me to make it. He said, like, here's your next film if you want it. And he's like, there is a condition though. I'm like, what's that? He's like, I already cast Leo as the lead. So I was like, okay. I guess so. So Hugh is really who Leo has to thank for being the lead of that, because I probably would have wanted to go a different way, not because I don't love Leo, but because I just didn't want to repeat myself. But then when I was faced with, okay, well, Leo is the lead and this is the film I'm making, pretty quickly, both Amy and Jonathan were like, well, what am I doing? What's our role? So what became fun for me on that film is Supergood is very different tonally than the Wolf Cop films. So it did kind of become like we're a repertoire company. And I said, you know what, fine, everybody back in the pool. But the rule for this one is don't do what you did last time. So whereas Amy is very serious and very wound tight as Tina and, that kind of character, her character in Supergood, Spanner, is still violent, but she's more of a loose cannon. She's not the responsible one. She's a bit of a drinker in that one, actually, instead of Leo, and she's got her own issues. And Cherry, actually, Jonathan Cherry plays the villain, so he's way more suave and dapper, and he's not like a silly redneck with conspiracy theories. So that kind of became the game for us. Is like it was, even on the paper, it was not Wolf Cop. It's a little more serious and dour. So it's like, okay, if we're making this, and I am challenging myself and trying to make a movie out of my wheelhouse tonally, let's have everybody be a little different. So it was a really fun experience. And Supergood is another very under the radar, like the Wolf Cop films, but I'm very proud of what we pulled off with that film, because it was very low budget. It was like 1.2, but we have hundreds of effect shots, and it's kind of like a Saskatchewan Mad Max, which is very relevant now because it's about like this disease, this lung disease that basically shuts down society and has everybody kind of going into these crazy corrupt factions, and going out on the highway could get you killed. So it's definitely different than the Wolf Cop films, but still fun.
I did see the trailer for it, and we're gonna hunt it.
Where can we find it?
That's a great question. I know that the Blu-rays, there's Blu-rays in everywhere but North America, as far as I know. I've got friends in Germany who've got one, and I have a friend in Japan who's got one, but for some reason there's no North American one yet. But I think, it's got to be on platform somewhere. I'm sure it's like on iTunes or something.
We'll go find it. The trailer was on IMDb, so
okay,
I wanted to, and yeah, I'm like, well, so where's the bit where you have the links? There were no links.
Yeah, it's one of those things, It's like, I don't know. It's not silly like the Wolf Cop films, so maybe it didn't get as much of a push, but who knows? But again, Wolf Cop 2 didn't get much of a push, so it's getting hard to get movies out there.
So you've done some work on with Atomic Victory Squad comics?
Yes, yeah, that's my new labor of love. I think partly based out of how hard it's been to get films made and get exposure for them, and how long it takes. I was like, I need a hobby. I need something in between making films. So Emerson, who does the effects for Wolf Cop and all that stuff, was like, he and I love going to fan expos and engaging with people and building things, and he loves making badges and just like, talking to people who like movies. So he said we should go with something that's completely ours and independent and just a small grassroots thing. And he's like, what do you have in your pocket? And I found some old drawings I'd done of these superhero characters that I knew I would never make a movie of because they're too weird and it would be like the biggest budget thing ever. So I said, let's just do this. It's like the most messed up kind of Avengers-y type thing, but like these characters are all super messed up. They all have amazing powers but no responsibility. And some people who've read it have compared it to like Rick and Morty meets The Boys. So it's very silly. It's very it's violent. Like it's got the tone of, I'd say, the Wolf Cop stuff, but the visual absurdity of like Rick and Morty or BoJack Horseman. So I was like, I just want to make this, and we crowdfunded the first few issues, and we made our goal, and we were just having the best time. So Emerson has made a maquette, like he did the action figure of Wolf Cop. He did a maquette for the main character, our Superman, who's basically like a flying male cow. And
nice.
I know, it's weird. It doesn't really make sense. You have to read the comics to understand. But so we did that, and now we're working on issue 4 as we speak, and it's the kind of thing that I'm going to start pitching around as an animated series because that's the only way it could exist.
Okay. Now, what is your involvement in the comic?
I created it and wrote it, and so we've hired an artist, Javier Caba from Spain, who was literally just chosen for his style. His style is exactly what I wanted the characters to look like. And we've got a letterer, Mika Myers, out of the States, actually. And Maurice Roy puts the issues together, the layout and design. And we've got like these great covers done by Mike Anderson and Joel Hustak. And yeah, Emerson is basically like just like a creative consultant on everything, figuring out how we can market and get things going when we go to fan expos. So he's designing our booths, and he's making cosplay and just all kinds of crazy stuff.
Nice. I'm just going to warn you, I'm going to be reaching out to you through DMs or email about making a comic.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we have a sci-fi series that we twice put on the launch pad to turn it into a graphic novel, because we've had half a dozen producers tell us, this is great, but I'll never sell it because you guys don't have like 5 shows under your belt.
And it's too expensive.
Yeah, it's an expensive.
Yeah, and that's why comics are great for that, because it's the same thing. Like, no one told me I couldn't make a Diamond Victory Squad. I just knew, like when I make Wolfpack, and it's hard enough having one character, I knew that I wouldn't be able to make a thing where literally 4 of the 5 characters would be CGI or something. So comics are a great outlet, and what's cool is it also helps you flesh out the idea visually. But you do have to raise money. That's the hard part.
Well, that's
when you see it.
We never got to that part. I mean, we had these people say, if you came back to us with this script and an IP, you had your own thing, I could get you indoors. And we're like, okay. So we went that route, and we found a professional comic artist.
Great.
Who, well, it was.
We talked to him, and he was really excited. And then we inspired him to follow this other project that he was working on that he had put on the back burner.
Okay.
Well, yeah. It just kind of fell apart. So then we're like, okay, let's wait a minute. Which is just as well, because I know how to write a script, I know how to write a story, but I don't know how to write for graphic novels. So I was learning how to break things up, and how to section this off. Someone could draw and condense this down to 25 pages and however many panels. So while I was doing that, I found another really good artist here in town, a young man, and talked with him for a bit. We had him over, and gave him the script and said, okay, I want you to read this so you can see what it's about, and then let's talk about what we can do. And we basically told him we're looking for someone to, we don't want to hire someone to just do this, ink it kind of thing. We wanted to bring someone in. So like with the first person we talked to, that was the same deal. It's like, we're not looking to just like have you do this. We want to bring you in and give you a share of this. We want to make you a partner in this endeavor. And then, that if you get someone invested, it just seems more real. Well, the second fellow, the onus of it all kind of crushed him.
Okay.
He wrote me, he's like, I'm so sorry. I can't. It just seems so.
It is a lot of work, and the thing is, it's a lot of work for the artist. So
I
would recommend working with someone who has more experience than you. I can say that's really helped me in the comics because, I have a lot of experience writing and doing film and stuff, and I think that's helped me, help people want to support me because they know I'm someone who will finish a project. But getting the artist and the artist I chose, I chose Javier based on what I've seen of his work already. And he had done comics and to the point where it's nice when you know enough of what you want that if you don't have an ego, someone can also look at this and say your script isn't formatted right, and he would say, this is maybe works for how you do scripts, but it's a little confusing for me. So can you redo it? And be like, oh, okay. So I'm learning. He's teaching me, and I'm also getting the benefit of his experience and talent in comics.
Yeah. Well, I'll be hitting you up later on some of those nuts and bolts.
Sure.
And we're gonna hunt down these comics. I love comics. I used to, when I was a kid, I had thousands.
Wow.
Well, because back then, in the mid 70s through mid 80s, comics weren't collectible, for kids.
Yeah.
They'd get the comic and then they'd send it, or the parents would throw it out. Or if you were lucky, they'd take it to like the used bookstore. And I would always go back to the used comics section. And sometimes they're only like 4 or 5 months old.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're a quarter. So yeah, I would just pick these things up left and right and everything. And then I lost almost all of them. And now my collection's down to about 100 well-loved comics.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that I'm missing so much because we just don't have time to explore all the comics, all the movies.
I know it is hard. I mean, I don't collect comics anymore, and I still enjoy them, but like it's not the same as when I was younger for sure. But now I pour a lot more time and energy into the creation of them, so I'm loving them in a different way, I think.
Well, you mentioned that this couldn't be a film. It'd be better as an animated series because the level of effects would be crushing. I'll use that to step into a discussion on like the future of filmmaking. And this is something that Danny and I talk about a lot is, are we going to see sometime soon a shift? Hollywood has been the mecca of filmmaking forever, even though a lot of movies and TV shows are going up to Canada to film because it's just so oppressive down here for, creatives to get anything done. We have what we call the Hollywood formula. And the Hollywood formula is every movie that's come out in the last couple decades has an A, B, C. Oh, there's A, up there's B, and up here's C. And it's all very familiar, very similar, and we think boring.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. You have to hit certain audiences and expectations because it's almost like like Martin Scorsese said, it is an amusement park, and I think like the budgets are getting so big that you can't take a risk. You have to be sure that you offer the 5 things everyone expects from a movie now in the theater.
Exactly, and I think indie filmmakers are getting so much attention, not because there's like a sudden renaissance of we have a new form of storytelling and we're all better at what we do. It's that people are starting to see, holy crap, a really good movie can exist without A, B, and C. In fact, you don't have to have A or B or C. These things are doing their thing. And I walked out of that theater or that showing or, got up off the couch and was like, Jesus Christ, that was a movie. I mean, what do you see the indie side of things surpass where Hollywood would take a back seat, where audiences may eventually come to understand, these CGI fests and, hundreds of millions of dollars in budgets don't necessarily make for better entertainment?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a tough question. I think people are still going in droves to Disney movies and Star Wars movies of varying quality. So I know for me, I'm gravitating more towards TV. I think like, quote unquote TV, but like serialized narrative storytelling in multiple chapters is kind of what gets me going lately. And I still will love a good tentpole film. Tentpole films, like even like something as silly as like the Fast and Furious movies, or whatever the latest Marvel film is. But they don't surprise me. You know what I mean? Like I'll go in and my expectations are low, and I just want to have fun and see things on a grand scale. But the things that actually get inside my head are usually, I hate to say it, but like HBO shows or things like that, because that to me is where the original daring and nuanced storytelling is going. And it doesn't mean one's better than the other. I love all forms of entertainment. I would love to play on a big playground with a lot of big tools and toys and armies of effects people. But, I also wouldn't have any illusions about sometimes the disposable nature of that form of entertainment. It's for a certain age. The people who are coming up and who are 12 years old right now, these Marvel movies will be their everything. And, they'll be like, for my generation, The Empire Strikes Back was, right? So I think each has its time and place, but I hope the film going experience isn't dead or dying. But I do think it would be smart to find a way to diversify it, because indie filmmakers like myself, I still love the theatrical experience, but I have no, illusions about where my bread is buttered, and that's in VOD.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I do think that just we're seeing a huge rise in indie films and B movies, because movie making now is so much more accessible than it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we love the Marvel movies. We go knowing there's nothing there that's going to challenge my perception of self or the world around me. There's not a great story here, but it's fun, and it's comic book fun. And like you said, for kids, we take our daughter because I can share with her finally all the comic book experience that I had as a kid. And seeing these movies, this is what I wished for. When I had my Captain America comics, my Batman and Superman.
That's be careful what you wish for. I was the same way. Daydreaming about what a big budget Marvel film could be like, and then we all went. So now it's like we get a new one every week.
Yeah. And same with Star Wars. When Force Awakens came out, because we had from a young age had sat her down through my VHS copies of Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi, and indoctrinated her into that. And it was just awesome, because she was 8 yet?
Probably
7 or 8. I have to do the math. But anyway, she was the same age I was when I first went to go see Star Wars in the theater when it came out. That came out that weekend nationwide. And that was just an awesome feeling. Her first Star Wars theater experience. My first time seeing a new Star Wars movie in X number of years. And a continuation of the story, not a prequel. It is astounding. The theater experience is awesome. And I've always wondered, what drove theaters back in the day weren't the tentpole movies from the studios. It was the serials. All of those little serials, I know growing up, like my grandparents and all their friends and aunts and uncles and stuff, the thing they loved best about going to the theater was to see the continuation of a story.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've wondered what that landscape would be like if we took some of these like HBO series, and I always consider HBO to be the original streamer.
Yeah. I would have gone to Game of Thrones. If they put Game of Thrones in the theater every week, they would have made a killing off of me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They'd have made a killing off a lot of people.
And I think that's the one thing that binds people together yet. And I think that's still the main division between indie films, a lot of B movies, and then the A movies, the big movies, is the lack of theater. Like you said, the Wolf Cop and Another Wolf Cop weren't, put out there. And I think if they had been, somebody would say, you know what, I'm going to pick this up and just put it in all my theaters everywhere, and have like 700 screens going at any given day. People would have noticed it, because it's not always the poster or the trailer that draws in. If something looks even remotely interesting, it's that theater experience. But that is getting soured by the fact that when we go to the theater, we've skipped out on a few. It's like, man, I don't have 3 hours and 20 minutes to sit in that damn theater.
Well, you make the movie for the theatrical experience. And I can say, like, Wolf Cop was really fun to watch with an audience. Like, I wouldn't take that back. Like, some of my best memories of that film are at a film festival with like a packed theater. be it Fantastic Fest or Fantasia. Sometimes it's 100 people, sometimes it's almost 1,000 people, and to hear everybody react to that kind of movie, right, and the shock at the Dick, and the laughter at Willie, it's like it really just makes it all worthwhile. It is a group communal experience, and whether it's 20 people in your basement watching it on Netflix or Amazon or Shudder or a packed theater, that's kind of why you make a movie like this. So it's not the Avengers, obviously, or Furious. We don't have those budgets, but yeah, I mean, I do think little movies like that hurt, but there have been, everything in its time and place, and the Wolf Cop movies haven't gotten the exposure necessarily I wish they would have, but they've gotten enough. There's been a lot, like Alamo Drafthouse have done double features of the two Wolf Cop films in a few places, and we've done some across Canada, so it's gotten some fun moments for sure.
It has, and it's been, I think the Wolf Cop movies have been pretty successful, to the point where I was very excited when Jim told me that we were going to be interviewing you. Not to fangirl or anything, but I was like, oh my God, what? And then I had to tell all my coworkers, right? And they were all like, who's that?
Who's that? Yeah. That's exactly like the experience I have when I talk about Wolf Cop 2. It's like, they're like, oh, I love Wolf Cop. I'm like, what do you think of the sequel? They're like, what? So, yeah, no, it's that weird kind of middle of the road thing where I've gone places where there's a lot of Wolf Cop fans and people want to line up and they have cool art I never even knew existed to talk about it. And then I go places where people are like, what do you do? What's a Wolf Cop? So, yeah, it's definitely not like we're changing the world levels of horror fame, but we have a good little group, I think.
You do on Twitter, especially because we follow a bunch of podcasts and they follow us, and a lot of them are horror based. There's a lot of the horror community for some reason surrounds
very
us.
Tight knit.
And we do a lot of horror films because we make it very clear in every other episode. The reason we're doing another horror movie is because for independent film, horror movies are like 75% of everything that's made. The other 25% makes up all the other genres, but horror movies are super simple to make because you can, the example we always give is you can be sitting in your living room, you can have your iPhone, have two people and just make the lights flicker, do something scary, have some spooky, creepy lines. You got a horror movie. You don't need masks. You don't need makeup. You can do horror Hitchcock style. And, that costs you nothing other than the pizza you're giving the two people who sit on the couch.
And the fact that just the whole horror community, like you said, like whether it's a big budget or a great film or a schlocky film, like I have felt very embraced by the horror community. Like I have no regrets about like pursuing horror versus like indie art house cinema or something, because it's like it's the amount that we've got to travel and talk to people, and the love for indie horror is crazy.
It is. And like I said, I've seen several live tweets, hey, this Friday night we're doing Wolf Cop. I'm going to live tweet, and then some of them do their streaming on Twitch and whatever else is out there. But it's just funny. Like I said, to hear the words come out of your mouth that, didn't get as far as you would have liked. I think it has, but on a quieter level, I guess.
Yeah, and it's maybe a slow burn. I think like the cool part about it is people do like. I was shocked that it was only last year that like we got to be on the last drive-in. Like that. The fact that people were just discovering it then made me think like, okay, maybe because of the tone and the look of the film and the fact that it almost feels like a lost '80s film. That it's not like really trying hard to be a modern film. Maybe people will keep discovering it for decades to come.
I think they will.
Well, it would be one thing we want to do down the road is do some theater gatherings here in town, and contact people like you and Anton in Alaska for Space Trucker Bruce, and say, hey, we're going to run, we want to run 3 films, and just bring the community together. We'd like yours to be one of them. What do we need to do to work that out? And do like a live podcasting between them and stuff, but bring that community together, not just horror, but B movie community together. And, I think once this madness is gone and this COVID thing has passed us by, and we can do these kinds of things again, like gather more than 10 at a time. I think, it's a slow burn, but I think we're going to see more of like Wolf Cop in these kinds of settings. It has that cult, like I said, we went into it thinking, oh shit, here's another one we missed out on. The cult is probably tight knit and we're on the outside and damn it, because it really just, it just has that feel. It just begs you to tell people about it so that you can talk about it with them and share it and have some sort of group to be like, when someone says Lou Guru, all 100 of us are like,
Yeah. It is meant for a communal experience, so that's great. That makes me happy.
So, looking forward, projects on your dock. Are you in pre-production for Deadlands?
It's a very loose pre-production. We've got a script and we've got a schedule, but like we're still in the very early casting phases and like location and most importantly budget. So there's nothing really to announce yet. I don't, like the rest of the world, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 months. So it could be, if we're lucky, later this year, and if we're not, a couple of years from now. So I'm always developing stuff. Deadlands is definitely one of them. It's with Justin Ludwig, the writer of one of the writers of Supergrid, and I've got at least 2 or 3 other things on the go in addition to Atomic Victory Squad. So just always trying to like get the next creative project going and pay the bills.
Yes.
Yep. So, what brought you into filmmaking originally? What lured you into the world?
Just movies, like being a child and my parents taking me to the movies and just always loving it and wanting to think about nothing but the movies, and then getting a home camcorder and wanting to film, make my own movies with my action figures and my friends, and then just not really wanting to grow up when everyone else is like, time to grow up, and being like, wait, do I have to get a job or can I keep doing this thing with the video camera? So that was kind of it. It's very simple and it's very unoriginal, but just like a pure obsession with the art of making movies.
One thing we say, we've said a few times in past episodes about creatives, that we're all mental defectives. We're not fit for the normal world, because our goal and ambition is to fully immerse ourselves 100% in a career that offers no hope of
stability or security.
Every minute of the day could be it. You could be done.
Yeah.
Did you was there a come to Jesus moment where you realized, wow, I've set myself up for something that has no guarantee future, no transferable trade value?
I've known it all along, but I also, that's the internal struggle at all times is, could I be happy doing anything else? Or do I go into the unknown with a very likely fear of dying broke and alone and a failure? But no, I just love it too much. And the idea of some kind of 9-to-5 job in an office, there are many times I wish I could do that, because it is very punishing in the gig economy, going from job to job, trying to balance out your creative desires with paying bills and, keeping those around you happy. And it's always a compromise. Film is always a compromise. So you can even get the thing you want, and then you'll have 50 voices that you have to adhere to on top of it. So it's always a struggle, but I love collaboration and I love being creative, and it's really kind of one of the only times I feel alive. I can't imagine doing anything else, and if I could, I would do it.
That's awesome. That's spoken like a true creative.
Yeah.
So this whole podcast is we decided to go real big, right? So we picked like the smallest niche possible,
audience,
which are like beginning filmmakers. and people who just like B movies who have that itch to do something.
Just the most specific niche that we could think of.
So, but the whole point of this is, the reason we watch movies, talk about them, and what things they can learn from them is, to get them to understand at every level you can create, and it doesn't have to look like $1 million film. It doesn't have to look like $100,000 film. It could look like $100 film. And the thing we always tip our hat to is you've made something. Yeah. And everyone who makes something, for every person who has something on YouTube or in a theater or at a festival or, somewhere, there's, 200, 300, 400 people who have not done jack shit. And they just talk about it. And, to get them to understand you made something, even if you think it's the biggest piece of crap out there, you did it. So you're way ahead of these people in that you've actually stepped into the pond.
Yeah.
And you're trying to swim. If you had any little nugget for those people who are just starting out or, struggling, they've done 2 or 3 little things and they're, wondering, is there any little nugget you could throw out at them to give them direction?
I've spoken in a few film classes, and it's really like depressing and harsh. But the thing I honestly believe is, if you can quit, do. I think that's how you'll know if you're meant to do this. Like if the idea of stopping doesn't break your heart and destroy you, do it, and just do it for fun on the side, But if you can't do anything else and you're driving yourself crazy at the thought of doing it, and you're spending your side money developing these things, and your day job goes into, paying for half of these things, then I would say then that it's in your bones, and don't have any guilt or shame over it, and just dive in, because it's like, I really do believe it's not a filmmaking, and other creative endeavors. Now I think that for me extends to comic books. It's not a job, it's a vocation. It's as if you were chosen, a calling to the priesthood or something. It's going to be your life, and you're not going to shut off your brain after 8 hours. You're going to lie in bed thinking about what you can do better tomorrow. And that's an obsessive, weird way to live, but it's also really cool at times. So I don't know. That's not really advice, but that's something I would say is like, if you can quit. And if you can't, don't punish yourself and just kill yourself to be better every day and love it.
I think that's great advice. I think that's not only advice, but a whole mantra. I couldn't have said it better myself. We do what we do. We've told people, like friends and family, like who are, it's been, how many years, and, you haven't, you always get, I always put it like, we always get called to the party, but we never get through the front door.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's really
we're stuck out on the lawn.
It's a very hard party to get into. I've made 4 films, and I couldn't even tell you how each of them got made. None of them got made the same. I wasn't hired the same on each of them. It's been a very unique journey with each one. There is no formula, Sometimes it's an interesting combination of luck and persistence and talent is the least of the things.
Right. Well, and we answer them with quite simply, we don't care.
Yeah.
I don't want to be famous. Okay. So the bottom line, the like maximum goal would be to, get in a writer's room somewhere. Well, get our series developed and, be in the room, and in 4 years become the showrunners.
Yeah.
But we're going to be writing scripts and stories till the day we die, regardless. Yeah. So, if I live to be, 90 and I kick it, and, Danny's stuck with 40, 50, 60,000 pages of scripts and
something like that,
unfinished novels and stuff. You can hand that down to someone else. Maybe in our daughter's lifetime or something. Maybe no one will give a shit and it'll just be used for kindling. But, that's why we do this, because I can't imagine not.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. And it's hard for us to find writing time. And when things happen and we're like, it's been like 4 weeks and we haven't even so much as fucking talked about this script, it hurts. It makes us anxious, and then when we do get that, we got 12 hours.
Maybe we could spend 12 straight hours writing. And then we do.
Yep. And
I haven't written anything in like a couple of weeks, honestly. Like the world is really stressed me out, so it's hard for me to think about it.
Well, yeah, I completely get that.
Yep.
But, when you do get to sit down and you do get to write, for me, I get jazzed like I've just drank 12 shots of espresso all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's funny. I mean, I get excited too, but yeah, we'll be an hour into it and she's just like literally buzzing. like somebody who's mainlined caffeine. Let's keep going. So yeah, I think that is probably the biggest and best nugget of advice that listeners could have. Straight to the point.
Yeah.
You've got to love it. You've got to love it or it will destroy you. And that's how we've always felt. If you don't love doing this, you can tell us no all you want. We started out doing it old school, sending letters out, cold letters.
Yeah.
And that was immediately disheartening to get all of them back unopened in a big, like, kryptonite encased envelope
from the legal
department saying, we can't even look at this. Go away.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, you've got to come through a certain, like, a representation or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we found our way around. But yeah, that was, didn't know. Oh, man. Well, Mr. Lowell Dean, the creator of Wolf Cop, which we hope is going to be a continuing franchise in any form.
We were promised a continuation of the story in another Wolf Cop.
Wolf Cop will return. The specifics, we'll see, I guess. Yes.
Not to point that out.
Oh, I'm pointing it out.
I know. I knew you would.
Yeah, here's hoping. I'd love to do more.
Yeah. So,
do you have anything you would like to plug or talk about?
No, I feel like this was a good deep dive. I think we talked about pretty much everything I'm working on. I have to go make new stuff if we're going to talk. Keep talking.
Well, we will definitely have links to everything we can find links for. If I can find Supergrid somewhere, I'll definitely post that in the show notes. And
a link to where you can get a Wolf Cop action figure.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yes. I don't even know if there's any more of those. Hopefully.
I suppose
a link to where you can maybe get a Wolf Cop action figure.
Yeah.
Or where you could have if you were quick enough.
Exactly.
Then I'll put a picture of ours up there.
Might take a while to get there because the Postal Service is running a little slow these days.
Good point. They probably don't put that on the high priority list.
No. Well, this has been a great talk. We've been looking forward to this for a while, so I'm so glad we got to do this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, honestly, it was a nice step outside of reality to talk about some nice stuff for a change. So thank you. It was a good chat. So
B-siders, you've heard the man. Now you got to go see the movies if you haven't already, and look into all this stuff and jump in on this massive fun water ride / tide pool that is Wolf Cop, and not to just hold that out on itself, but Lowell Dean's talents. And get involved, folks, because this is what it's all about.
Well, that was a really great conversation with Lowell Dean.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. I hope that we're able to do more interviews like that in the future. I think that they're really fun. We always get a lot of great information. I especially liked his tidbit at the end, talking about, if you can quit, do it.
Yeah, I think that is the most solid advice ever. I mean, we want to encourage people, pursue your creativity and do all that. But yeah.
If your heart isn't in it, then this isn't the business for you.
Yeah.
Because it will crush you.
And, just to kind of recap that, it's not saying if you're financially stable,
right,
and you can quit, and not have to do all this to make money, then do it. It's saying if you can sit down and go, I think I'm going to quit, then do it.
Right.
Because if you've reached that point, you've either not connected fully with it, or at some point you lost that connection.
Yeah.
And if you lose a connection to that point, I kind of get it that, hey, this wasn't for you, because I mean, we would never.
We could never be happy not doing this.
Right. And it's not about money and selling things or, it's just about doing it.
Right. Those are all nice bonuses.
They are.
But yeah, that's not what it's about at heart. It's about creating.
It is. And a lot of our followers are authors.
Yeah.
We have a lot of self-published and to the grindstone, going through publishers and stuff, published authors that are kind of the same thing. It's like, I don't know why I do this, but I can't stop myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's nice.
It is.
It's nice to be in that realm, as torturous as it can be.
And it's whatever it is that you have as your passion. If your passion is makeup effects or acting or writing or directing or even just, being a PA, right? Just being a part of it.
Yeah. If being part of the process is what brings you joy, then
there's no shame in that at all.
No, none. It's, from illustrators, artists, painters, people doing comic books, people doing, gorgeous murals, to, musicians, anything that you do that's creating something, you've got to have that come to Jesus moment where, it's, am I going to stop doing this? And, if you can let it go, get out, because you're not going to do yourself or anybody any favors.
Yeah.
With that. So I get that. I
get it.
Because it, and if you're listening and you're, like, man, I want to get into this, and, you're taking that first step, it's a bitch. It's scary. It's unrewarding on a material level for who knows how long, right? You don't get instant gratification. You don't get paychecks. You don't get publishing deals. You don't get movies made just because you're diving into it, and 6 months later you're expecting woohoo.
Right, but you take the little wins along the way, and they're major wins, right? When we finish an outline, we're like, oh yeah,
finally.
Oh.
Now we can get to the next step.
And if your thing is special effects and like practical effects, and the first effect you make that really makes you happy, celebrate it.
Yeah,
take that win.
Absolutely. Take it and then, build on it and build on it. It's a rough thing to get into, but like we've said, to do this, you can't be right in the head. There has to be a part of you mentally that's broken where you don't analyze, risk versus reward kind of thing.
Well, I think it's a lot. You can't function without it.
Right. You've got to doodle. You've got to write a couple lines, or you've got to run it through your head, and you tune everything out around you because you're lost in your, a segment of a story that happens 3/4 of the way through of something you haven't even put together yet.
Right. You're like acting out scenes in the shower by yourself.
Yes.
Making stuff up on the fly.
Yeah. I've even heard people who will like act along with a movie that they know, they've seen it many times and like, I'm going to play this part. So they act out that part for that character while they're watching, but that's the thing. That's the desire and the love that you've got to have for yourself in this process.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's my favorite piece of advice I think we've gotten so far.
It is. And we're going to have a lot of great interviews coming down the road. We got some things in the works and, I mean, there's so many people out there. We could just do an interview show, but we want to talk about movies, and then we'll talk about some people talk with the people who made some of these movies. I think that's the way it works out best.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to find out who we've been talking to and what we've been talking about, go ahead and hit up our website, www.lordsofmisruleproductions.com, and you'll have everything there. We have our blog. We have our complete list of podcasts. You can listen to them there through the browser. We have our subscription links to a lot of platforms. And again, if you don't see a link to subscribe to whatever platform you listen to podcasts on normally, send us a note and we'll fire it up.
Yep.
And also links to our social media.
Yeah, our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Also a link to our Patreon page.
Yes. And our YouTube.
And
channel,
our YouTube.
Which is essentially the podcasts.
Yeah.
With a 2-picture slideshow.
Yeah.
For those of you who like that medium.
So go check us out on our social media pages. Give us a like, a follow, subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform it is that you listen to.
Mm-hmm. Rate, review. That would be great to do that. And if you hit our Patreon page, go ahead and, become a patron.
Yeah.
It's, one tier. We do that just because nobody misses out on anything. Once this gets rolling, everybody will be a part of it equally. And I think that just works best. So do it. Check us out. I think that's going to bring us to a close.
I think so.
We had a great talk with Lowell Dean. Also check show notes for links to Wolf Cop, another Wolf Cop, the website.
Where you can get a Wolf Cop action figure.
Oh, yeah. Get some swag.
Right?
Yeah. And also his comics.
Yes.
I have a link to that as well. So, check everything out. Remember, every time you do something like rent or buy, you are supporting independent filmmakers, these B-movie masters.
Yes.
That this is what this show is all about. And where you're probably going to learn more about filmmaking on every level, in every aspect of it, than you will from any course.
Well, yeah, it's direct and practical experience.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, you learn by example.
Yeah.
You look at, wow, that looks good. Okay, so I want to emulate that in my next shot or my next, film or my next acting performance kind of thing.
Yeah. And I know I subscribe to a bunch of, like Reddit threads where there's filmmakers and stuff. And a lot of them are like, oh, check out the lighting in this shot I was playing with today, and it was just them in their house, with like a lamp that they put a blue blanket over or a blue, scarf over. And like they end up with these really cool shots, all of that kind of stuff that seems like just playing around, teaches you a lot of lessons.
It does. That's what it's all about, is see it on the screen. And if you like it, try to do it, yourself, whatever it is.
Right.
And, that's great motivation.
All right. B-siders.
Yeah. Until next week, I'm Jim.
I'm Danny.
And this is Bravo for the B-side. We will talk to you in a week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.